Kristen is creative director and designer, currently teaching design and illustration at the Pacific Northwest College of Art. For the past decade, she has used her background as an award-winning editorial art director to design meaningful experiences, publications, and brand strategies across media. She spent 2010 to 2018 as art director for Bitch Magazine, an independent media organization whose mission is to provide and encourage an engaged, thoughtful feminist response to mainstream media and pop culture. Her work with nonprofits and values-driven organizations proves that thoughtful design drives engagement. It builds community and makes a difference in people's lives. Her website is krbee.com. I also wanted to add that we've known each other for a long time. Kristen and I connected over this small publication called The Bear Deluxe. Small, but it was around for a long time.
Yes,
Yeah,
small but mighty.
Small but mighty.
We used to carry it right out there.
Yeah. So she was, I've submitted some artwork to the magazine, and she championed it for me, and so we've been friends ever since. And I know she's extremely talented, so without further ado, let's welcome Kristen and let her talk about her own work.
Thank you, Kendra. That's so lovely. Yeah, I first met Kendra. I was a fan of her work, and she's pretty incredible. Aside from all the other things that she does with advocacy and the arts, she's an amazing artist herself and very close to my heart and the kind of work that she does. So it's really an honor to be here. I also want to say hi to Martha Lewis, who we used to teach together, and I love Martha's work as well. So it's really an honor to get to present to all of you. Martha and I and all of the folks at Clark have shared some students. We've had a lot of students come from Clark to continue and get their BFA or even their master's degrees at PNCA. So it's really fun to see people who are at your stage of kind of figuring out what things are, whether you're students or teachers, we're all kind of figuring it out. So I'm going to try to let most of my work do the talking, but I'll center, this conversation is going to be a little bit centered from the perspective of my publications work, just because I know there's a production class here. And that can be really fun, and we always talk about, it feels like always, in my lifetime, we've always talked about, like, is print dead? And that's kind of bullshit, right? Because it's evolving constantly, and I love to think about choosing the right media for the message, and there's something really scrappy and wonderful, and yes, even accessible, about something you can hold in your hand and spread around and share with friends. So print and web and whatever else, they're not evolutions of the same thing, they're friends or cousins. So, this is my dog. I like to leave with a picture of my dog because, dog pictures, helpful for stress. We all kind of, as creative directors, designers, have a lot of titles for ourselves. I like to think of myself as a problem solver or a problem raiser. I'm a little bit of an instigator. I mean, I can't solve everything. Which leads into some of my work at Bitch. I was at Bitch for almost 10 years. It was my dream job to produce feminist media, to work with amazing writers and illustrators, artists. But that was a culmination of a lot of things in my life. I started, actually, my major in college was creative writing and studio art. So I came from a fine art background. Creative writing was really strategic where I went to school, and I actually think I use a lot of that skill that I've developed in that degree in my work, just pitching things. I hate to say, I joke about always using my poetry degree to help me write emails, but I write a damn good email. I'm a good advocate, and being able to put words with your images actually is pretty critical in all of our careers. So I had done many different jobs, worn many hats, and I went to Bitch because I had been working in corporate America and an in-house design team after doing some studio stuff, kind of working around all parts of design, and realizing that I was leading a global team, actually, with 5 different countries. And I felt like it was all in the air. Like it was all very theoretical, and I wanted to do something hands-on. So going to Bitch, even though it's it was a national magazine with a several million person reach, I was excited about the locality of being in Portland, being with my colleagues, getting to reach out to whatever artists I wanted from everywhere, which I was already pretty good at, and then bringing that into like a real problem-solving in-person experience and helping people kind of raise their voice. So I ended up, I'll show you some of the covers. Oops, I'm going to skip the additional window, but you can check out a bunch of the covers that I did here. Was about half of our lifetime of the magazine. I ended up producing the cover, creating the covers for, and doing all the design of the interior. And I was primarily art directing myself at the beginning, which anybody who works at a small or an independent company that was a nonprofit can probably relate to. You may have a fancy title, but you're also cleaning the coffee machine and everything else. So I did a lot of those things there, but by the time I left, I had worked with hundreds of different illustrators, actually all 7 continents, and had worked with writers from around the world too, so that was really, really fun. We redesigned our website while I was there, and not just as a magazine website, but as a kind of a hub for media advocacy in general. When I got to the magazine, we had been doing maybe 3 blog posts, articles, long-form articles a week, and housing some of the content from the magazine. By the time I finished, we had digitized all of our back issues. We had a fully operational store, and we were publishing 5 to 10 articles a day on the web and running fundraising campaigns during all periods of the year. I also was fortunate to be able to advocate for doubling the pay to illustrators and designers that we worked with. And when I left, 3 art directors had to be hired to cover the work I was doing. And I'm pretty proud of advocating for a better working situation for them too. I was really incorporating more voices in something that should be diverse, feminism. The work I've been doing since then, I mentioned that it was my dream job. When I chose to leave, that was a really hard decision. You know, when you get your dream job, there's a little bit of a like, oh crap, what's next kind of attitude. And when I quit, it was because we had grown to the point that I really felt like it was time for somebody else to take it over. And I had the opportunity to continue teaching, which I've been doing for a long time. And I have had a variety of reactions to that. If any of you guys have been mentors or leaders, sometimes people kind of question why you would do that instead of, maybe something more corporate, wanting to learn more, while also, doing big campaigns. I was really excited about the number of people I could actually touch by the teaching, and at the future work that could inspire and kind of being in a learning environment. So I've been there 5 years, or maybe more than that now, full time, and I feel like my practice is alive again, like my own practice as an artist. I don't do as much as I thought I would do, but the things I take on are really nourishing to me. So last year, this is an example of a book I did for one of my colleagues. He's a painter and illustrator. He creates probably some years like 50 oil paintings a year, and he was doing a retrospective of his work for the past 10 years. So we self-published this book, and it was really fun to get to work with him. That's one of the things I love doing, being able to leverage some of this experience and figure out, is that actually the thing he wants to do? Is that right? We could have done a website that did all this, but we decided a book was the way to go. And then I also have kind of melded my, indie publishing interest with student work as well. So we used to have a public portfolio show that actually Marsha and I started together many years ago. And in 2019, I was tired of having events, and we were having less and less of people come out to them. So it was a good time to do this because I didn't know the pandemic was coming. But I decided that I was good at books. I hadn't made a magazine in a little bit, be easy for me, haha, to help put together a publication that was a portfolio show instead of an event, and allow us to put something in people's hands. So with students, we now publish this is almost 300 pages, book with all of the portfolio work from our seniors in graphic design and illustration, kind of like a design manual, so that people could see it. I work with a different graphic design student every year, usually juniors, sometimes seniors. That's my work study student. It's kind of like an internship, but the student actually gets to help develop and really lead the art direction for the magazine. And then I get to design new stuff with them, new layouts, look at type differently, look at images differently, and kind of aspire to a level of professional practice with their work that I would want to see in my work as well. So these students seeing their beautiful projects like in print like this is a pretty awesome opportunity, I think, and I'm super proud of it too. So every year the look changes. We even change the format sometimes. These are all from 23, I think. We did a website one year. We did a card deck one year with pieces of everybody's work in a deck of playing cards. But then the design can be kind of trendy, and the format can be kind of classic. But we design it with whoever my work study student is. We work together to choose the format. Again, right format for the right message. I've been excited since I started teaching. We actually got a couple of feature spreads in Juxtaposed magazine showing off the program. So here's a couple of examples of that. This show's kind of pretty fun, actually, to get to work with all of the design work with the students and be like, what does this look like? What does a design degree look like? When people sometimes assume it's making things look pretty or it's making logos, stamping those on something, when I see this, I think it's exploding. It's just anything. So that's what I wanted it to feel like. And was able to represent, I think there's like 15 different students in these ads. And we did 2 for graphic design and 2 for illustration. And then after that work, we were on their editorial radar as well. And one of our students' thesis projects actually got a write-up in their print edition, which was pretty exciting. So I'm going to center the rest of my talk around Bare Deluxe as kind of a case study for how design can actually lead and change things. This is a magazine that had been around for, 20, 25 years. And I had been working as a volunteer designer, sometimes art director, sometimes board member, since 2001. So it had been almost 20 years. I had managed a team of all volunteers. It's a real labor of love. And when I came in, it was kind of zine-y. I mean, it was kind of like a periodical newspaper format, a little bit punk, which I was down with, and really talking about the idea of art on the edge, discovering environmental issues through art situation in like a place, in a location. So, leading into 2019, the magazine itself, the Bare Deluxe, it was kind of situated on the brink. It was a journal of art and the environment. It was the final scrap of a larger nonprofit organization that had sponsored new and up-and-coming voices of place-based art since 1996. And while it had a really strong artistic voice, we had been able to get featured in print magazine back when that was a thing, and in several design annuals, and also featured by some environmental art activists doing work. Some subversive roots with humor and parody, as well as kind of clever activism. The piece on the right, we actually did a photo shoot about Superfund sites in the area, but we branded them as super fun sites in kind of a sarcastic way. So we actually played badminton on the river at a super fun site in hazmat suits. And then one of our volunteers went wakeboarding in a hazmat suit behind this boat. And someone got on the front of the boat and took a picture, not me. We were actually playing things kind of safe after a while, especially for a publication that had been known for instigating stuff. This shows some examples, not that the design was necessarily safe, but we were doing a theme about wolves, and that felt a little bit like an encyclopedia instead of like a scrap of a punk magazine, you know? Our featured artists and contributors had been a really diverse group in terms of their interests. We were all volunteer leadership team that had been working with the organization for years, and it reflected kind of a more narrow perspective of environmental art and environmental justice than what we wanted to sort of stir up. And we really wanted to change that. Our most recent themes have been approached in a really literal way rather than conceptual. We did attempt a future issue at one point, but that was kind of the most concept we got. And the latest themes felt really tactical, and they were explored that way. They're kind of hung around a specific place, like the coast, or a type of art, like contemporary art, which is, to me, kind of, I mean, I love contemporary art, but it's kind of like, what's that? I don't know. Poetry, or fiction, or like a specific animal, like the wolf issue. And it really reflected the particular interests of the editorial staff and not the ongoing conversation that we wanted to inspire about art, about the environment, and activism. Our audience was really impacted accordingly. It was aging. The magazine was kind of aging out of relevance. What used to seem on the edge or the brink was moving a lot faster than the content we were providing. So the last few issues, since about 2018, the board and the design team had felt the need to move more truly reflect the voices that had been working in environmental art and design in our region here, specifically the indigenous voices, people of color who have been working on the forefront of these issues for thousands of years, generations, and a sense of urgency in climate justice with the work. So it's a real vision change and a chance to close the chapter and leave space for like the next generation to do this work. Definitely inspired by my work from Fitch and by moving on from that too. And I just didn't want to see it go out like with a whimper, you know? I wanted it to be like a big bang and really say like, I'm done with this, it's been 20 years. Felt like a kid when I started it. I was in my 20s, I was in my 40s, or older than that, maybe, when I left. So I guess I just wanted it to not feel like an end, but like a new start, whatever that looked like. And I didn't want us to be kind of hollow in our activism. Thinking about the old way and what was different from the old way, kind of like withering modernists from the last century, wanted to embrace the possibility of what's next and the seeds that were taking root in our communities. So, had kind of a light bulb moment. We had lost a lot of editorial leadership with the magazine for years. We'd had one of our longtime editorial director resign, and we need to move on to a new job. It kind of presented an opportunity to close that chapter and leave space for the next generation of the project. We wanted to reach beyond what was comfortable and redistribute control to folks who might be the future of art and social change and climate justice in the region. Maybe people who were like 2 degrees away from where we were now, not like people who were just coming to us wanting to do this, but to take some risks ourselves so that the magazine could take some risks. So we proposed a new theme after doing a retreat to go through some leadership vision changes. And the kind of what happened along the way was pretty significant. So in November of 2019, we decided to rethink the next issue. The new content was not aligned with the vision that we had put out there. So then 2020 hit, and we had our work accepted by the board. We had a grant for the issue, enough to cover publishing and funds for the artists. And then in March, the world changed. We repitched. At this point, we had no editor, and I was just stubborn. at this point. I was like, we have money. We are not going to waste this money. We're all in lockdown. This is the only thing I can control, right? We all felt really out of control. And I was like, hell if I'm going to let this, like, kill us. And hell if I'm going to let somebody else come in and decide, like, oh, we'll just do a cute issue. It'll be easy. We wanted to not take the easy way out. But my idea was to support artists and bring people closer together at a time when we were feeling really alienated. So as we did this, I started reaching out to folks to contribute, and protests erupted after George Floyd was killed, both in Portland and then especially in our communities that we were trying to speak to, talking about environmental justice and activism. This really impacted our community. In June, we had the hottest recorded temperatures in Oregon history. There were crows drinking from a kiddie pool in my backyard. Our dog wouldn't go outside, sad. I mean, those were the least of things. But we were not only alienated, not only were people trying to do this activist work on the front line, but it really hit home in terms of global warming and some of the issues that we wanted to talk about in the magazine. And because we were working with Indigenous artists, some of them were really involved in the front lines of that as well, especially when the Labor Day fires opened up then. I actually had one artist who was a waterkeeper in Central Oregon with her tribe, and she was corresponding back and forth, talking about the vision, talking about what she could do to help, as well as managing a lot of change. In 2021, right after we sent the issue to press, we had a fabulous ice storm, snowpocalypse, transportation halted. The paper we had sourced couldn't make it to the printer. That feels small in context of all the other world issues, but we were like, is this going to happen? And then by March, we had figured it out. So it was kind of a bananas time to be trying to do a print magazine. Maybe stupid, we don't know. But all of these things actually sharpened our vision, really made me feel more stubborn and more resolved. I think the evolution of communication among the group that was collaborating on really gelled, and we really relied on each other to make this happen at a time when we were so disconnected. I also wanted to take the money that we had raised for the magazine and redistribute that to these artists who were really, as I described, on the front lines of climate justice issues at a time when it was really needed. So our old editorial model kind of looked like this. The editorial direction came from one person, very centralized. My husband now and partner in crime for this issue, I had recruited him a couple of years ago. He's also a designer to collaborate on this with me. And so we were not controlling, but kind of channeling the work of the artists and the design of the issue and the printing, while the editorial director was really deciding on all of the content we're writing, the contributors from outside. And we had a grant to fund it. We had a year to send it to press. And this old structure, I produced this idea of endurance as being the theme of the issue, which felt good at the time. We told our board told us we had to just figure out a way to make it work. And that theme motivated us to figure out a way to do that. But we couldn't just sit down and wait for an editorial director to make it happen. So this was the model that I proposed working with. I really wanted to decentralize and kind of explode the editorial direction, because a centralized one-person volunteer editor-in-chief hadn't worked for us, and we were feeling fighty about the printing. So we were excited to really have the design of the issue and those artist relationships drive the content in the magazine instead. So we went for something like more circular, where we reached out to individual artists, 5 artists that we had kind of like an art crush on, and asked them to each choose someone to be in the issue. And they could choose the format of the content. They could simply show their work like a portfolio. They could do like a case study of one project. They could do an interview, or they could do whatever they wanted. We just gave them kind of a page count, word count range, and they could explore that. So here you'll see design is at the center, and it's really supporting everyone in communicating. And I think of design illustration is really being visual communication, not putting frosting on something to make it look nice. You'll hear it, like, make it cute, a lot, but that's not what we wanted to do. So we wanted to exemplify that in how we were doing the content. So we all started connecting and talking and formed a stronger web of contributors so that we were all accountable. And if one person had to drop out, we had a million people we could ask to step in for help. Our artist curators kept us all accountable. In fact, one of them pointed out that the theme of endure had some problematic connotations in the indigenous communities. We shouldn't have to just sit here and take it when injustices and when climate change is thrust on us. And we needed something a little bigger than that. So we settled on this theme of apart and proposed that we create an issue as a time capsule, brimming not only with art, but the stories of humans making the art behind the scenes in this moment, 2020, 2021. So rather than paint a broad picture, Apart reveals bright glimpses of what it looks like to fight, to grieve, to celebrate, and to take up space. Apart grapples with a sense of urgency at the intersections of place-based art, identity, and the environment in a really expansive sense. So loose, like whatever they wanted it to be. We didn't want somebody to have to be all activists to be in here, that simply by existing and making thoughtful work, they could be a part of this. So our 5 creators who served as sponsors and connectors to these 5 artists who inspired them had a chance to reconnect and build new relationships together. Their works and words are woven together in the issue in conversation with each other. So we showed a little bit of the curator and a little bit of the person we were featuring in the pages. Our old issue was always done on craft paper. It was kind of a result of the environmentalist. It was actually trash. This was the craft paper that had been used to wrap publications in the past. And so we printed on this brown paper bag kind of paper. And it felt really fun. We won some awards for that. It was pretty good size, typical magazine size, but in this time we felt like we wanted to retain some of that sense, but make it feel like it got much bigger and like the work couldn't be contained by the pages. We were feeling very claustrophobic, honestly, at this time. So we wanted something that felt like it was exploding out of the format from before. So this became much bigger. This was the biggest size we could produce on the press that we used and still not have it be $1 million. So that's why we went with this size. Yeah. We were just there as instigators and a safety net. So while my partner and I were there to make it all happen, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to fail. We didn't want our contributors to feel like they had to like sit in a corner. So, design was another voice in conversation with the art. We allowed ourselves to have a strong point of view while centering the folks who were curating and featured in the issue. And I actually wrote this introduction letter just to kind of tell some of that story of the timeline. I was grateful that I had a background in writing, that I hadn't done something like this before that felt so public, and relied on some of my contributors to make sure that it was in line with what they were excited about too. So letting those design decisions lead, we used different spreads, different finishes on the paper, different color treatments to celebrate the difference of each artist and the individual voices of the writing. Jay Dodd is a trans woman poet and activist, video artist, so we like designed a layout according to that. They're super dazzling as a performer. They did a lot of like fashion-inspired stuff and nature-inspired stuff, real, like kind of a diva persona. So I wanted the spreads, the design to feature that, and again, feel like they're too big for the pages. So featuring artists in their own words with work of their choice and framing their nominating artists, the piece becomes an illustration of our extended communities and proof that we can reach a lot further than we think as artists, make a big impact. We got to use metallic inks and a mix of papers. This shows that poet, performer, artist, along with the sculpture of the work, the person, Maya Vivas, who nominated them. So you start to see, just as we started putting our favorite images together, how the works talk to each other, this sculpture and this human form in the video. And through design, we were able to bring out the visual echoes and kind of I think of it like rhymes of their work. Maya's work on the right, Jay's on the left, poetry. The design of each feature fit each artist's work. So this is an indigenous photographer who was photojournalist, who was tracing the migration routes of his tribe with his, I think, daughter. Some were on really rich matte paper to kind of bring out the earthiness and newspaperiness of things. Always letting the quotes from the artist be huge. Feature their words first. Some were on glossy paper to get the full effect of bright spot colors that we use throughout. So production-wise, this one's kind of fun because this was on a real typical magazine stock glossy, and that this was not even a spot color, this was 100% magenta, and it just popped off the page because it was so bright. And sometimes we found that there were additional connections between folks who had come into the project from many different points. We found out that 3 of the artists that we were featuring actually were working together on a Caldera Arts retreat project. And they were talking about being involved with the magazine like behind our backs over there, which luckily was a positive conversation, but it made us feel like it was really bringing people together. We were able to explore areas we probably wouldn't have had access to, actually, without the relationships that were built by the featured and nominating artists. So this person, Chad Brown, introduced us to the Wiccan people in Alaska. They're the Caribou people, and really remote to us area of land that they are carekeeping. And they had participated in his work previously. We were not going to Alaska, and our writers were not going to Alaska. So it was amazing to have these. And with Chad, this shows an example of how the community became even deeper. Chad told us about adventure trips that he was running that went to remote areas to us of our region to learn about stewarding the land. So his trips pair veterans with at-risk youth to learn from folks who have been stewards of environments directly, so like the Wiccan people and others. And the combination of like teaching and learning and doing, and Chad's own art making, he's an amazing photographer, felt really unique and fitting with the conversation we were also cultivating. So it's really fun to show that off. We got to feature photographers, writers, painters, installation artists, designers, and new technology. This is from an illustrator animator who works with AI and with AR, VR. And production-wise, we decided to use a spot color in the background. So it's super nerdy, but on the paper, this yellow is like electric. This illustration on the right is beautiful in print, but let's see if I can get this to play. There's an AR component to it. So when you hover over it, the forest comes back to life. Just a really cool production moment, fun to play with. Moments like this show rather than tell design as the lead actor of the publication. One of my students last year I asked them for our liftoff book, what they wanted to say to younger students in their next phases of school. And they said, don't talk about it, be about it. And I like that. Maybe I can get it there. All right. So this shows another way of that, not talking about it, being about it. Our paper choices. We worked with a vendor who I had contracted with for 100 years in different projects. And we chose both a vendor for printing and a paper supplier who reflected our values: sustainability, community, somebody forward-looking, with roots in our region's history too. The paper that we used was actually test runs, all trial papers, made with agricultural byproducts from our region, so corn, like husks. And some of it was a real experiment in a new type of paper for the mill that had made it. The experiments that they were doing with manufacturing actually allowed a long-standing paper mill that had been closed in our area to reopen near Oregon City, and reemploy hundreds of people who had been laid off in the closure from a few years earlier. So we were really excited about that, and pretty excited about the agricultural content too. Plus it made gorgeous paper. There were little yellow kind of wheat-colored flecks throughout. So we mixed that in where we could, because they didn't have enough of it to do a whole issue. So we were like, cool, let's use some glossy paper too, and let's use some matte paper that's really beautiful, bright white, as well as the stuff with the flecks in it. And they donated the paper because of that, which was really amazing. So we got more money to give back to the artists. We just kind of worked with what we had. Manufacturing times were bananas and unpredictable. Paper was unpredictable and costly, and still is. And again, this is that example of like, be about it. And I was able to close a chapter of my practice that had been going since I moved to Portland in 2001. So this was my way to go out. We ended up with this beautiful explosion and a labor of love, and the visual artifact was the idea that we're so much greater together than the sum of our separate parts. If there's anything I could have you guys take away, it would be that design can be that. It's the gestalt, it's the thing, we learn about this as like a design fundamental, but it's in the work. It's not just how it looks. It's how you can bring people together. So, the bear is dead, but long live the bear. Thank you. You guys have questions? We have a few minutes left. I can walk around with a mic too.
Do you have any, where can we get copies of The Bear? Do they have any?
I would love to drop a big box off for you because we still have a lot of them. We got these back in 2021 and we're still distributing them. I didn't have a box to bring, but I've got one coming to me. So if you don't mind, I'll drop some off and you guys can come pick them up.
I absolutely love The Bear. I've used it for quite a long time as a teaching example. So,
oh, yay!
Yeah, we used to get them here and I would pick them up. And, I think a lot because of your use of paper and your economic use of materials, I would use it to show students how use of materials is integral to the practice of graphic design, and about how with that creativity you can make magical things happen without a big budget.
So I want to leave you.
Thank you for years of inspiration for my students.
Oh, that makes me so happy. And this is such for folks who are watching this on the video, I'll kind of repeat some of that too without getting too embarrassed by your loveliness. But I think hearing that people use this as a teaching tool, not this issue, but all of the issues that we've done and how we creatively use materials and how you can show people how you can, this isn't exactly how you see it, but how you said it, but I like to think of it as being scrappy, You can make a zine or you can make something like this, and possibly with the same budget. Just creative reuse of materials, creative relationships. I think the relationships are really part of that. The fact that you were picking up the magazine and feeling that in the materials without even hearing the story of all the decisions that are made, that makes me feel really people can tell.
Yeah, the magazine spoke for itself. Yeah.
Did anyone take
Good
one
job.
down a week or two ago in their stack? There was a Bear Deluxe in the magazines that we looked at in class a couple weeks ago.
I'll give you as many as you want. We've actually got quite a few of this in storage still, so we'll be in touch. Yeah.
Are you still working in publication?
The question was, am I still working in publications? Kind of, yeah. Most of the stuff I'm doing is even more self-generated than this. I get a sabbatical next year, so I'm thinking about what I want to do, and I'm thinking about this idea of like editorial as a way to bring people together across distances, and I'm hoping to travel a little bit and do something related to like getting people to submit from different continents. Partly relying on some of the contributors I've worked with in the past and who they're looking at. That's like more than just working in publications though. I mean, what I like to do now is if I have a friend or an artist approaches me who I'm really excited about working with, because I've worked with so many writers and artists, that's kind of my sweet spot, especially women artists, gender neutral artists, queer artists, folks in my communities who I want to help them kind of amplify what they're doing. And then we'll do something scrappy and beautiful. So, yeah. And I work with students. A lot of my students are doing books in their projects too, whether they're books enhanced by AR, or folks who are doing print, or folks who are doing like a web publication. Actually, one of my thesis students from 2023 came from Clark, Joseph Bonifacio, and he was a photo minor at PNCA, and he did a book where he snuck into landmarks across the Pacific Northwest at night and did light paintings in the sky, like around the landmarks. And so he published a book for his thesis. So I get to work on things like that, but not in the way I have. It's fun. It's more fun, honestly. What else?
That's awesome, Matt. Does he still work at the foundation? Joseph? No?
No.
Joseph was working at our foundation for a while.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, he's a treasure.
Yeah.
Good person. What else?
So are you still teaching at PCU?
PNCA, yeah. I'm leading the department in graphic design there now. So one of the things I like about that, beyond just teaching, is that I get to pull together people who are better than me at some of the things that I am not good at teaching, and sort of provide a whole experience. But yeah, I teach mostly the juniors and seniors. I teach a class where we do actual client work with nonprofits called Center for Design. And I do a class where students develop their portfolio and kind of start shopping around outside. And then I'll teach sometimes typography or sometimes design 1 and 2, depending. Sometimes I get to make up a class and teach that. We're doing a lot more collaborative teaching now, which is really fun. So I could collaborate with like a printmaking teacher or like a journalist or a poet and do something a little different. What else?
I have a question.
Yeah, Kendra.
So I love what you say about design being about bringing people together.
You don't have to be so bad.
I was just saying that I love what you said about design being not just making something, but fostering community collaboration. For people looking to do that, do you have any suggestions? Do you have any things that these struggles that you came across along the way that you might
Oh my gosh, yes. When you're trying to, well, for me, everybody's going to be different. So the question was finding, helping you guys especially unearth some like stumbling points maybe that have come across and some good things too. I think one of the things for me is, like I said, I'm kind of an instigator and I'm really driven, and not everybody operates on that same timeline. So I think having, especially if you're doing a volunteer-led thing, a community-based thing, realizing that that is a tool of white supremacy and patriarchy, and don't have to always adhere to those timelines. People have lives, and you want to respect that. And then sometimes have to drive. Sometimes you have to push and make a different turn. So I think being thoughtful and being a good listener and sort of hearing it first before I dive in and I'm like, well, we still have this deadline. I'd rather listen to it and think about it and see if I can make room for somebody and then go back and sort of gently say, like, actually, we really need this. So it's a little more negotiation than I thought. Your timelines are always going to be longer if you're working with more people. And I think of it like when you're walking through water, you can walk like this and go really fast, or you can walk like this and bring like a huge wave of people along with you, but it's way slower. So that's probably the biggest thing. I think a lot of communication and trying not to gatekeep, but not giving people too many tough decisions to make, like helping crystallize that for them so they don't feel like they're carrying the weight of all that too. I don't know if that helps. And as a designer, bringing in people, if you're leading it, bringing in people who have expertise you don't is awesome. Like we hired a proofreader for this issue, and I didn't get paid, but I felt like it was really important to hire a proofreader. I hired a trans person who was doing a lot of advocacy work and kind of operating outside communities that I'm in, so that I wouldn't fuck up, frankly, and hurt somebody. Yeah, what else?
I would just like to announce, and maybe you have some comments to follow up, that PNCA.
Do you want a mic? You probably don't need it, but
I'm kind of loud by nature, but I wanted to just let everyone, all the students, know that PNCA is a really good partner with Clark College. They have good advising information if you make appointments with their advisors. They have all of our classes mapped, and they can give you good advice. The classes, it's not so exact, like if you take typography one there, here it's the same as their typography one, but they really do a good job of helping students transfer, and they give most Clark students a minimum of a $9,000 scholarship. So I just wanted to let you know that they're a school you should maybe check out if you're going to transfer for a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
that's so good, and that's such a good reminder for me to be better PR for our school too. We actually have new in the last few years, new equity scholarships, so we have money set aside for folks who are from Black or Indigenous communities and BIPOC folks and folks who actually will be supported through all the rest of your years. There, most students get some form of financial aid, and Clark College students specifically usually transfer in as juniors and end up finishing in 2 years. But if you're excited about design and you want to think about concepts in your work, or how are you going to start trouble, or do you want to practice a little bit more and build a better portfolio before you go out and start working to get some hands-on experience, it's such a fluid transition. Some of the Clark students are among our best. I mentioned Joseph, but also Ashley Conjugashion came in and designed one of our issues of Liftoff with me, and she was really into games, so we made it a card game instead of the book. And I also, if you liked this talk and you like me, I advise all the design students coming in, so you will get to talk more and you have a little bit of a less scaly transition too.
Are you guys still doing First Thursdays?
We are still doing First Thursdays. Yeah, have you, any of you been to First Thursdays in the Pearl? Long time ago. So we're back. And PNCA got a grant last year to kind of help revitalize that and bring it up. So we've been planning shows that are really fun. Actually, this First Thursday, so 2 days from now, we have our, I think this is the first in a very long time, design exhibit showing in our main gallery, and we're doing something called Eyes and Ears. It's a celebration of the last 5 years in music and design, and I'm co-curating it with Nijan Berahimi of Fisk Gallery, who was one of our longtime teachers, and we're bringing in graphic designers who worked on all kinds of albums. There's like 18 people in the show, videos, merch, all of that. And the gallery is floor-to-ceiling posters from music stuff, and we've got a couple, like 3 or 4 design lectures in this series too. So you can look it up. I can send links to your awesome faculty here if you want to come to that stuff. All of our lectures are free and open to the public, so before the pandemic, we were getting lots of Clark students. I think a lot of people forget about First Thursdays, but really fun. Anything else?
What kind of advice would you give to someone who might be interested in going to publication?
In going into publication? Think about yourself as an experience designer or an interaction designer, not just a publication designer, because you're working with humans, or material that's for humans. So every decision you make can be really focused on how someone's going to play with this thing, right? And use the medium that you're working on to do something that can only be done in that medium. So like for us, we were like, well, everybody's at home anyway. They're not going to be carrying this magazine around. Let's make it ginormous, so if they are reading it outside, it's obnoxious to do. Like, you just want to lay on the floor with this thing and look at it. If you want somebody to take something with you, make it pocket-sized, If it's private, maybe it's tiny. Stuff like that. You would think about that with web design and other things too, but if you think of a publication that way, one of my first mentors told me that publication designers make the best web designers because you're thinking about how people read and how people use something, and I think that's evolved since then. But let different kinds of media influence your print. It's going to be way better. It'll be its best thing. And then also know that you have to do it as a labor of love sometimes. I don't advocate working for free, but I've definitely done it a lot, and I'm so glad I did because it meant I didn't have like a funder sitting over my shoulder telling me what I had to do. My standards are, I'm hard on myself. We're all hard on ourselves. Like, we can be a good curator.